you. So much pressure. If I had known, I would have, I don't think we need, yeah. I would have brought my own Tom Brady picture.
Do you have a Tom Brady picture?
I mean, I could have made one, certainly. I think could have
Maybe a Manning
photoshopped.
picture would be
Yeah,
better for New
maybe
York.
Manning. That would have been a good one. So let me give you guys a second to introduce yourselves. Maybe we'll start with Sam.
Sure. Sam Jacobs. I'm CRO of the Muse. We are the largest career development and career pathing website in the country, primarily for millennials, and we help companies express themselves in a more human way so that they can attract and retain the best talent. So it's themuse.com. Check it out if you don't know about it.
Awesome.
I'm Bill Sexton. I'm Director of B2B Sales Operations for Samsung. So I think you guys know what we do, but sell a lot of electronics and mobile devices, and we're looking to rapidly expand that into the enterprise organization.
Awesome, great. So for us to kick off the panel, I think maybe it would make sense for us to establish what we're talking about when we talk about scaling a sales team. So why don't we go ahead and define what we're talking about, because I think a lot of people can think of scaling in a lot of different ways. So I don't know, Sam, do you want to take that?
Sure. So I might be repeating myself if we're friends on LinkedIn, but basically, I think a lot of people talk about scale, and what they mean is hiring people. And I've seen a lot of CEOs of $2 and $3 million ARR companies lecturing about how they've scaled the company, but what they really mean is they've hired a tremendous amount of people. I don't think that's the appropriate definition of scale. I also think a lot of people assume scale means automation, and it doesn't necessarily mean automation either. I define scale as profitable repeatability. So what that means is anything you can do over and over again at a profitable rate is by definition scalable. I worked at GLG. We took that company to $300 million in revenue. It's going to probably get close to $500 million this year. And we didn't use a lot of technology and automation. It was primarily a services business, but it was a function of the deal size. So if you have a good deal value and you have the right relationship between cost of acquisition and lifetime value, then you can do a lot of manual things and it's still scalable. The average deal size when I was at GLG was $250,000 per customer. So, you do need, at a lower deal size, you do need automation because it's just a function of how much you're charging. But when I think about scaling, what I'm looking for is profitable repeatability, and that's why, the way I like doing it is with good deal sizes, with charging people lots of money for things that they care about. But that's what it means for me.
Sure.
Yeah, and I'd echo a lot of what Sam just said. When you talk about scale, it's not necessarily hiring heads. It's how am I going to drive more revenue, right? I'm going after a market. I want to grow my business. So that's what a leader means when you're scaling. The easiest way to do that, if you want to show to your leadership how you're going to scale and you have a $10 million budget, I'm going to hire 100 heads. But that's not always the best way to go about it. So you really want to look at the productivity of the team that you have, and then what are the things you can do to better enable them, empower them to drive a better deal size, sell more faster, right? You'll see a lot of cases where you're seeing activities, but you're seeing lackluster revenue performance in half your sales organization. How do I get that half to drive like the other half? So that's something better to look at first before you go out and ramp up a sales organization. It's very hard to ramp down once you ramp up.
Yeah, absolutely. So how do we create this, right? And I think a go-to-market strategy that has to be crafted in a really thoughtful way so that you're not just throwing headcount at the problem. How do you guys think about your go-to-market strategy? How do you think about that as you're building out your team?
Well, the first thing I think about is, like I said, deal size. I'm just a stickler about it. One of the points that I've been thinking about recently is just the notion of a big sales team with an SDR function for a $10,000 average deal size. So I think that's, I don't think that's going to exist in a couple of years. Bill and I and Kristen were talking backstage. I think the first thing is, obviously, you need a great product. And there's going to be two ways that you sell it. You're either going to essentially go enterprise, you're going to raise the deal values and get to $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 deals, or and that will support, typically, if you have the right renewal rates, that will support an SDR and an AE and the right level of support, and a sales engineer potentially. But at the lower end, you're basically like Atlassian, which is an incredible example. It's going to have to be about the product, and it's going to have to be about incredibly incredibly efficient customer acquisition. The reason I say that is because at a $10,000 deal size, you probably can't pay the reps enough to hire the very best talent. So, when we look at the quality of sales professionals, and as John Barrows was saying just now, by the way, what an incredible talk that he gave, and I'm so glad that some of my reps are in the audience listening to how important prospecting is. But, I think we all get thousands of emails and outreach that are not very sophisticated, that are just spam cannons from people that aren't particularly thoughtful or curious about what we're doing. I think that whole function is obviously going to go away, and the reason that it exists is because companies have to pay a certain amount to that rep. They can't pay top of market because the deals aren't big enough. So, that's one part of go-to-market, which is figuring out exactly what the pricing and packaging is so that you can support the right level of reps, so you can hire great people that are smart and thoughtful and can be interesting. And then I think the second part of go-to-market is really about demand generation, and we'll talk about that later. But I'm really just a huge, the order of operations when you think about building your company, sales should be the last thing that you do. I think a lot of founders get a little bit of a taste of revenue early on, and they think they've got product market fit, crossing the chasm. They think they've crossed it. They haven't crossed it. And I think the order of operations really needs to be product first, and then marketing, and then sales. And I think it's much better to have an incredible marketing leader that's developing and building a huge, great engine that's throwing off great leads and has a great content program and is doing really interesting things, and then hire reps so that their days are already full when you bring them into the organization, than it is to just hire reps and expect them to do all their own prospecting. You have to do prospecting, but it's probably the least efficient way to acquire new customers. So one thing I think about is demand generation and making sure that that's the mechanism, that's the competency that you can demonstrate as a center of excellence in the organization. If you can generate lots and lots of leads, you've got a lot of different opportunities.
Right. Yeah, I think at Trello, just to add to that, when we started off, we were, the product had been around for a while, and we were getting over 100,000 new users signing up every week. And so we had this tremendous amount of lead volume that was just being thrown into our lap every day, which, what a terrible problem to have, right? So, but it became one of those like paralysis through analysis. We had so much to do, and it became that question of at what point do you put a rep onto it? And we really did have to differentiate and say the product's going to drive that lower end purchase, and we're not going to mess with those folks that want to buy 100 licenses or 50 licenses, 10 licenses. And we really let the product and marketing drive that for us, and we've scaled pretty much solely on the enterprise side and having those high-end conversations.
Yeah, and again, I would say from a marketing perspective and even understanding your target market, right? So Samsung, we sell our products through the entire pyramid, and we spent a lot of time over the last year focusing on the top, which is going to be your big-time key account managers, deep relationships, C-staff management, that value sell. Well, this year it's really more about that middle, which is a very different way to go after the market. To your point, you're not going to hire a $200,000, $300,000 sales guy. You're not going to afford that on a $10,000 per deal basis. So do you outsource? Do you go to a more flexible inside sales organization? Do you provide more enablement material? Are you attacking the channel more aggressively? How do I partner with my carriers and expand my one-to-many philosophy? So it's really important to understand where in the market you want to go after, because you're going to scale wrong, to your point, if you go and say, I'm going to hire 100 reps, and they say, hey, I want you to go after the middle of the triangle. Now you just threw a whole bunch of money away, and they're not going to be able to. There's not going to be enough feet on the street to go after individual small, medium-sized businesses.
Right. Yeah, I think as you're building out your go-to-market strategy, you're going to make mistakes along the way, which is probably some of the times that you learn the most, right? You think that's the right strategy, you approach it, you realize it's going wrong, hopefully you pull the ripcord in the right amount of time and you try something else. So I'm just curious, if you guys have any examples of times that you experienced that and what you learned from it and how you pivoted from that. I know specifically for me at Trello, we had a tremendous amount of lead volume, and we had a tremendous amount of love from our customer base, and we just approached it right away from a sales perspective. And I wish if I could go back in time, I would have implemented sales ops much, much sooner. I think we didn't have a lot of good data for what we were doing. We were going on gut, and gut's great, but it would have been nice to have the analytics and the support and the process and the stack behind us instead of having to bootstrap that as much as we did. So I certainly know I would go back and do sales ops sooner. Do you have any examples of
Yeah, as a sales ops guy, I love that you say that.
Yeah, I'm
so
doing
I
your
agree.
job. I'm selling you.
Samsung's an interesting one because I came in, they really didn't have a sales operations organization, so they really did go forward with a strategy before having the organization to drive that. And then when I was at Motorola Solutions, we moved to a vertical sales model, and the same type of activity happened. If we could do that all over again, I think we would have done a better job to build out the infrastructure before launching the sales team. We kind of threw sales associates who were territory-based originally into this vertical model without the proper enablement, without the proper collateral, just expecting, well, now you're a transportation logistics sales guy, so you must be an expert, so go in front of UPS and sell this. We should have done a better job of enabling them, building collateral, and then even building the systems around to make sure that we can provide the correct reporting and data into that team so they can sell more faster and be more aggressive into where we're trying, right? Any strategy sounds great, but if you can't execute on it, it's worth nothing.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all on the same page. The biggest mistakes that I've made, it ultimately fundamentally comes down to the way, because I think we all tend to work in venture-backed businesses, high-growth businesses, and the way that non-sales professionals or even some sales professionals build the revenue model is a function of reps. So the way that you build it is you've got a spreadsheet, and it's however many people you hire, and what's their ramp time, and what's their attrition rate, and what's their average productivity. And that productivity question is the key question, actually, because what happens is, inevitably, every revenue plan that I've seen, especially because it's like a new sales leader coming into the organization, everything's fine, your targets are fine for a period of time so that you can hit them, and then all of a sudden there's some huge spike where you're expected to all of a sudden magically create pipeline and revenue that wasn't historically there. So basically the build is always a function of reps, and what happens, a bunch of bad things happen. One of the things, and it's not a function of number of deals that you need and implied productivity that you need to hit whatever that number is, which again, if you think about it that way, it's going to be more a function of marketing, number of opportunities that you need to create, how many MQLs you need, how much pipeline you need. So when you're building your revenue model by rep, what are you going to do? Well, you're going to hire lots of reps. And you're going to think that I need to hire as many people as possible as early as possible because the ramp period is so critical. If they're not at 100% ramp by December, then I'm going to miss my number. So again, it's all a function of the same thing. People defining scale as just throwing bodies at a problem, and it doesn't work. And so a lot of bad things happen if you don't have the demand to support those reps, particularly if your product market fit isn't quite as strong as you think it is. And that's why, again, it's like the $3 million, the $4 million ARR company, that's not the hard part. The hard, from my perspective, Lemkin, it was years ago, he said, 0 to 1 million is the difficult thing, but then 1 to 100 is inevitable. That's not been my experience. Certainly I haven't seen that inevitability in the New York SaaS market. I think that 8 to 10 to 30 is the hard part. And that's because that's when you're at the point where your customers are starting to renew. You need to demonstrate that there's clear product market fit. But what happens at 3 to 4 million is you just raise a big amount of money. You're going to spend it on hiring a bunch of people. You don't have the leads to support those people. All of your productivity criteria, all of your rates go down. Your quota attainment rate goes down. A lot of things bad happen. And so what I really wish that I would have always done is focus first and foremost on marketing. And the other thing that happens when you have this huge revenue number in the out half of the year, and the way that you think you're going to get there is by hiring, and you're starting to freak out. It's July. You need to hire 6 more people, or you're not going to have enough people to hit the number in December, is you start lowering your hiring standards. And I just really, and again, function of deal size, because you need a ton of deals. What I would really rather do, and what I try to do, is maintain high hiring standards, hire great people, have a good deal size so that great people, a smaller number of people doing a lot of business is the way that you get to your number. And you're investing in sales ops, you're investing in marketing, you're investing in lead programs, maybe you're investing in SDRs if you can demonstrate productivity there. But I'd really rather invest more per person and make each salesperson on the floor feel like a hero and feel like their day is full up than just hiring 30 people, killing your culture, and making it a shitty place to work.
Right. So how do you balance thinking about the efficiency of the rep and your hiring so that you're not ever understaffed too, right? So that you don't have it at a nice equilibrium and all of a sudden you lose somebody and now you're having to ramp somebody up again. Like, where do you balance that? What run rate are you running those reps at?
Man, that's a great question. I think that depends on what part of the market you're trying to go after. What are the revenue expectations for that year? But I would layer on, I think what's more important, if you're looking to hire up in the current year and you need to close a current year gap, that is the worst way to close a current year gap.
Yeah.
Hiring is your future plan. That's how I'm going to get there in 2018. If I have a gap in 2017, I need marketing, I need campaigns, I need promotions. That's what's going to get me there. What can I empower my team with to get me to the gap that I may have, or to grow above and beyond the plan that I'm currently experiencing? The worst thing you can do is go out and hire, and I like what you said, even lackluster talent, because that's blowing up your larger plan. You talk about millions. I have $8 billion, and I have to get that to $20 billion. So how do I do that over the next 5 years?
That's inevitable, Bill. That's
right. Inevitable. It's just going to happen, right? So I don't want to make any decisions
the
this
book?
year to hit my 7 to 8 billion to sacrifice the ultimate goal of being a leader at 20 billion. So you have to balance those things out. And that's always difficult with leadership, especially if you're in a time where maybe you're stressed to hit that current year. As sales ops, it's your job to say, I hear you, but that's not the right decision. Here are the things that I can offer you that I believe will get you there.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. We were just talking backstage. One of the ways I'm trying to look at it these days is, okay, we have a number in whatever month. How many deals does that mean? Then how many opportunities does that mean? Okay, and how many meetings, essentially. And so then you look at how many meetings are happening in a week for your team or in a day, and then you look at the total possible meetings that you'd need, and what's your capacity utilization. So if you're at 80% utilization, meaning all of your reps are busy all day, and there's still a gap, then you're going to need to hire. If your reps are not busy all day and their calendars are kind of empty, then before you think about hiring additional people, let's think about staffing up demand gen and let's get more meetings. So that's the way I think about it.
Yeah, not to make a pitch for this event, but that's why I enjoy events like this. There's a lot of people you can learn from, a lot of tools that you're seeing out there. If you hear the message that's being sent out there, it's not hire up. It's get your team higher up. And how do you do that? With the tools that are being offered, with the new techniques and selling. Social, very important. It's about that value sell. It's not about speeds and feeds and price. You're going to get killed every time if that's where you're going.
Yeah, that's a good segue, actually, because I think we were talking backstage, too, and I was asking what your guys' tech stack was, and it's something that I don't remember having as frequent of conversations around this even a couple of years ago, but it's one of the very first questions I ask other sales leaders, right? I want to know what you're using, I want to know how you're using it, and what you're doing. So let's talk a little bit about enablement, and we've talked a lot about getting our reps up to a higher level, and I think enablement and tech stack is a component of that. So how do you think about enablement? How are you building out that stack?
Yeah, so from a Samsung business to business perspective, although Samsung's a large company, it's fairly new going after business to business. So we launched Salesforce.com last year as I joined the company in July. One of the things we did wrong was we didn't have a process behind that. So one of the things you want to think about when you're building your sales stack is there's a lot of great tools out there, more than we can even comprehend at this point in time. Look at how many vendors are at this one conference. But it's about the process behind that. If you don't have a strong sales process that you're going to put into your CRM system is going to fail. If you don't have a strong marketing process and you're going to load up Eloqua, you're going to get garbage out of Eloqua. Your lead process, if you don't have a good understanding of the market you're trying to drive and the type of leads you want to drive, you're going to get hot leads that are, this is a funny story, I'll share this, right? I'm in the mobility organization at Samsung, and we were getting leads in mobility for Samsung breast pumps. So that's a terrible waste of my sales guy's time if that lead is getting fed into him. So as you see so many different products out there, we're really trying to stay lean. So we're trying to do as much as we can native in Salesforce and then be really thoughtful about the things that we stack on top of that. So you're not, one, overwhelming your team, and you're not adding tools that aren't adding value to your selling process.
I would think, yeah, I think that's a great point. The way I define enablement is, one of the things you first need to do is you need to try to draw a ring around sales operations. At least at small companies, what I've seen is that sales ops becomes a de facto resource for just number crunching and analysis across the organization. So you got ops, you got finance, everybody asking your Salesforce person to do work. The first thing you need to do is sort of say, hey, this is a resource, and the purpose of this resource is not analytics so that I can manage from an ivory tower and like have my little spreadsheets about who's hitting quota and who's not. I think it's really about trying to enable the salespeople to make their lives easier and more productive. And when you think about it like that, you can push back more easily against some of the other requests that come in to specifically answer your question, John Barrows was talking about some vendors. So we're on Salesforce. We just put in SalesLoft as our essentially email communication software. We replaced one of the other, I guess I won't speak poorly, but one of the other 2 vendors there. An area that we're looking very aggressively is around voice analysis. So I've said that voice is the final frontier in sales. It's the place where nobody knows what's happening until now. So there's a bunch of really cool companies. There's Gong. Chorus is obviously a huge sponsor here. Gong's a sponsor. A company called VoiceOps, which used to be called Clover. So that's an area where they're running analytics, they're running data on what's happening on the phone so that you can coach more effectively. I found those tools to be pretty cool. We have a Join Me integration with Gong, and so I get an email saying, hey, listen to this call that just happened with one of your reps. I thought that was neat.
That's great. I want to pause for Q&A, but I will say I will give a little shout out to Zoom, which is Trello as a company is about 60% remote, and I'm remote, and half my team is obviously remote as well. And so for me to be able to manage my team efficiently, we needed to have a really good video conferencing tool, and we tried all of them. And I will say Zoom just allows us to stay connected even though our culture is not all in the same office, and it's been really important for us to use them. So I think we have a couple minutes left. I don't know if there's someone out there with the mic, but we can do a couple minutes of Q&A, I think, now at this point. Sure.
You're close enough.
Just yell.
Sales enablement perspective, are you guys using any kind of LMS software?
Like learning software?
Yeah.
I'm not yet. I heard LearnCore. Is that a platform?
We're using some, but none that I'm super impressed with, so I'm probably not going to give a shout out. But again, it gets back to what I said. So if you don't feed into that organization exactly what you're desiring to get out of it, there's a lot of good learning organizations, a lot of good learning software. But if you don't know where you want to go with that, if you don't understand the process that you want to teach, it's not going to work. So I wouldn't stress so much about who to go with. They're all fairly good. There's a lot in common. It's what you want to provide into them before you go out and search for a vendor.
So I guess as a follow-up, how are you housing the documentation that you want your team to be consuming?
I mean, I'll plug Trello here, but that's a lot of what we do. So I have like a Trello documentation and an onboarding board, and I copy that every time a new hire starts so that they get the exact same experience as the other reps do, and they work through that board in one clean go. And then the nice thing with that is if there's questions from the rep on, I wasn't unclear on what this was, or I couldn't access this documentation, or we should add whatever, we'll update that onto the new master template, and then for all the new reps going forward, it's resolved. So you kind of always have that context there, and it becomes a little bit more collaborative. So I'll plug my own stuff there, but we're using Trello for it.
Trello is an awesome product. We use this company called Google. I don't know if you guys have heard of it, but they have this thing, Google Docs, and basically you can type stuff and everybody can see it. So anyway, I'm being a little glib, but the point is that we use Google Docs and like spreadsheets to dump all the stuff that we think, dump our scripts in there, and then everybody can share it. Main thing for me is, I told my team, and they, I don't know what they thought. Maybe they were irritated, but it's unimportant. The point is, don't send me attachments. That's one thing that I'm trying to just put everything in the cloud because it's just really inefficient for people sending me PowerPoint decks and Word docs about scripts. I'd rather have everything be in the cloud.
I think we have time for one more question, quick. Yep.
So Sam, this one's mostly for you. So at the 10K price point, right, as you ramp up your demand gen, what are some of the ways that you can minimize the cost of missing good opportunities when you're ramping up those new reps?
So what do you mean by missing good opportunities?
Like you have a lead that you know is like, that's a sweet spot. If I give it to one of my more advanced AEs, they're going to close it, but now I got a newer AE, and they're going to drop the ball or potentially drop the ball.
That is a very difficult question. It's going to be a function of market size. If you have a big market, I forget Andrew Quinn, the sales trainer from HubSpot. They have so many leads at HubSpot that he has like a sandbox, and he can give every new rep or every new SDR, the shitty leads, and then they can like play on them until they get good. I think there's two ways that most companies do it. The first way is just through career pathing. So they don't bring that many people in as an outside AE. They bring them in as SDRs so that they can learn the sales process, maybe have some visibility down the pipeline, down the sales cycle before they become a full stack rep or a full cycle rep. And then the other way would be here's a territory, here's a set of opportunities that we don't think are the best. You need to close a few deals, even though we know that we recognize that it's hard. And as you migrate upwards, then we'll give you the better deals. So, if you talk to people that worked at like Yelp or Yext, the new people at Yelp, they would get like the Waukesha, Wisconsin zip code and it would be a while before they got like, New York City, Midtown in terms of like who they were calling on. So I would basically stage your territories and figure out what's the worst territory and give those to the earliest reps at first until they could close a few deals and then give them the better opportunities. The final thing I'll say is, again, like the inbound leads are your hottest leads, especially like your request demo leads. We do round robin there. I would have a qualification period through which someone could be inserted into the round robin, because those are going to be the ones that close the most. The biggest problem with bad reps is not that they don't close deals at all, it's that they trade. You'll close IBM for $9,000 when you could have closed them for $100,000. That's the biggest problem. It's not that they don't close at all, it's that they freak out, they're going to heavily discount, and they're looking for a transactional sale when maybe if you just took your time a little bit, you can get $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 out of the prospect, or $45,000.
Great. I think our time is up.
I think so.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.